As if things weren't weird enough in the world with COVID-19 and coronavirus and social distancing and quarantine. This last Wednesday, Utah was hit by an earthquake. Also, we're out of toilet paper, so I don't know what's going on in the world. So one of the things that sparked some serious excitement in me about the amount of books that I am going to be reading/listening to during this time period is that I found out that because of all of the COVID-19 coronavirus stuff that's going on in the world, scribbles, the app that's kind of like Audible. So they started offering like a free 30-day trial to access all of their services. And I'm pretty sure that they offer like a 30-day trial period for anyone who's signing up for it. But this is like a no commitments, no strings attached, don't even have to put in your credit card information, free trial period. So, because I'm real cheap, I got super excited about the fact that there are a whole lot more audiobooks that I can suddenly listen to without having to buy them. And realistically, after finally looking into their services, it might be something that I end up subscribing to later. This is not at all promoted. This is just me being super amped about the fact that like I can sign up to get a bunch of audiobooks and ebooks and stuff for free for the time being, because that is my jam. So a lot of the books I'm going to be mentioning on my quarantine TBR are all a bunch of different audiobooks that I just haven't had the chance to get to yet, and that I think will be better for me to access in an audiobook format, just because I really like having audiobooks going when I'm doing like my hair in the morning, doing my makeup, cleaning the house, those kinds of things. Just doing kind of like menial tasks that I can listen to while I'm doing stuff. So I really enjoy that. So for that purpose, it's going to be super nice to have a new variety of audiobooks that I can look at. So the first book that I'm going to be reading/listening to is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is one that I've been meaning to read for many years because I love Brandon Sanderson's works so much. I just haven't gotten around to reading this one yet. I literally have it on my bookshelf right here. I just hadn't gotten around to it. And then when I saw that that book was included in the subscription, I was like, cool, I will just listen to the audiobook then. So I'm currently listening to it, really loving it. Elantris is a high fantasy novel. Something has happened in which the magic system has been corrupted, and people who have this event happen to them no longer get magical abilities. They just die and are sent to the land of Elantris. So one of the key factors in this book is that the people who live in Elantris all are like acutely aware of pain. So for example, if you stub your toe or something like that, you get to enjoy the pain of that stubbed toe forever, for as long as you are around. So the amount of pain that people experience from tripping, stumbling, general aches and pains, paper cut, things like that, can cause them to lose their minds with insanity because, you know, that's all they can think about. They're just filled with pain. So you're following a couple of different characters, one who is a prince who is living in Elantris as one of the dead, and one who was this man's fiance. And so you're just seeing like two different aspects of it, one living in Elantris, one on the outside of it. Not very far into the book so far, but I'm enjoying it. And then another audiobook that I am going to be picking up is The Crown's Game by Evelyn Skye. This book takes place in Russia, which is always my jam. I love seeing books set there, but it's like a fantasy story with a lot of different political intrigue, magic, and all taking place in like a royal court. So I'm really interested to see that dynamic. I don't know a ton about the book so far, but I've heard a lot of fun things about it. So I have the physical copy of this book. I've been meaning to read it for a while, but when I saw that they had the audiobook of it and that it was narrated by one of my favorite narrators, Steve West, I was super excited to just listen to the book instead of reading it. So I'm going to be doing that in my trial period of Scribd. I really need to look up how you pronounce their service. And because I want to be a little bit more well-rounded during this time of quarantine. I figure it's a time of self-reflection and growth and other opportunities and such. I want to read a variety of books. And while most of the books on my list are fantasy, I also have some other books on there. I have some self-help books, some nonfiction books. I have some historical fiction. I also have science fiction. So I'm so well-rounded, you guys. In that light, I wanted to also take some time to pick up a nonfiction book slash self-help book, and that is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a... I'm really excited to pick this up. I heard it's really lighthearted, fun, and just kind of teaches a little bit about like not letting the small things get to you, which I'm sure is something that I could learn to glean, especially in this weird time period that we are in. Another book on my list to read is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. This, of course, is a World War II historical-based novel, and I believe it follows the true story of someone who was a tattooist at Auschwitz and who wanted to kind of change things around and try to help the Jewish families who were stuck in Auschwitz. I don't know very much about it. I've just heard good things, and I figure that this is kind of a short story, something I could pick up pretty quickly, and that is on my list. I also am in the process currently of reading Vicious by V.E. Schwab. So far I have kind of mixed feelings on it. I'm really hooked on the book, but it was surprisingly much darker than I anticipated. And it's, I don't know, it's interesting and it's really good, and I love V.E. Schwab's writing. And like, I normally don't have a problem with how dark books are. Like, I deal with like murder, those kind of things, no problem. But this book, I will say, does have a major trigger warning for a lot of like self-harm, suicide, those kinds of things, which I do think people should be aware of. I just have felt so far that it's a little bit dark. But again, I'm only halfway through it. We'll see what happens. But Vicious is a fiction novel in which there are two boys who are going to school together in college, and they start studying for one of their theses, the idea of extraordinary individuals, or EOs. And they determine that in order to become an EO, you have to survive a near-death experience. And so there's a lot of different elements to do with that, of people who have survived something dangerous and then they, through whatever means, are alive and living, and they develop some kind of like superpower kind of thing. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of fascinating elements, but like I said, so far, little dark. I'll give you an update later on that. And another book on the list of many books I want to read is West with the Night by Beryl Markham. I had this book on my list before. It's one I've been meaning to read, and I just have always struggled with biographies sometimes, even though they're amazing and I've heard such wonderful things about biographies. And so I just haven't buckled down and actually read it. But again, I've got some time on my hands. I've been meaning to read it. It's on my list of things to read this year, so I'm going to read it. But it is Beryl Markham's biography, and she was a female pilot and was the first female pilot to fly from the east to the west, as is the title, West with the Night. But I've heard incredible things about it. It has so many awesome reviews, so that is going to be something that I read. I also am currently in the midst of a reread of Iron Gold by Pierce Brown, which is the fourth book in the Red Rising series. Red Rising is one of my favorite series, and I just love it so much. But the main series follows Darrow, who is a miner on Mars, and he has lived there his whole life. His family's lived there forever. They're mining for certain elements that help terraform the planet, and they have been told their whole lives that they are mining these elements so that mankind can come and terraform the planet and everything will be great, that they're doing it for this great big cause. And then they very quickly find out that the planets have been terraformed a long time ago. All the planets in the solar system have been terraformed. They're open for people to go around and do stuff, but his cast of people have all been left underground as slaves. Such a good story. I didn't love the fourth book in the series, Iron Gold, which is the one I'm currently reading, the first time I read it through. So far, I still feel that way. I feel like the first three books are a lot better. The fourth book takes place like 10 years after the third book ends. And I don't know, I just haven't been super connected to the characters so far, but I do want to reread this because I know there's a new book that came out a few months ago, and I want to read that one and see if it redeems itself. If not, then maybe, I'll just be done with the series and just enjoy the first 3 the most. Next is Five Dark Fates by Kendar Blake, and this is the 4th book in the Three Dark Crowns series. It's a book series that I really loved when I first started reading it. The first book blew my mind, blew me out of the water. And then all of the subsequent books, there have been some that are really good, some that are less good. And right now I'm not sure how I feel like it's going to end. I still am very connected story-wise and overall plot-wise to what's going on, but some of the storytelling hasn't been my favorite. So I'm really hopeful that this finale to the series is going to tie things up in a really good way, and that I can, have some more answers about what's going on. Just because there were a lot of plot points that came up and then were a little confusing and dropped and thrown in and all over the place. And in this matriarchal society, every generation, the queen gives birth to a set of triplets. Each of those triplets having different magical powers and abilities. And at a young age, the 3 queens are separated at birth. The original queen leaves the island, and the 3 queens are raised by their different factions on the island, and when they come of age, they are supposed to fight to the death for the crown. I just really love the concept of it, but some of the execution of the book hasn't been my favorite, so I'm hopeful that this finale is going to be really good. I loved the series when it first came out, so I'm hopeful that I will love it when it ends. And in continuing my Sarah J. Maas obsession, I am continuing on with the Throne of Glass series. Last year I read all of the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and that was super great. So far I've read the first 3 books in the Throne of Glass series. First book I was really into it. Second book I was super into it. Most of the third book I was not feeling it. I think I just wasn't super invested in some of the side characters that came up. Also, Selena was being super annoying through the majority of the first half of the book. And then the third book ended, and I'm really hopeful to see where it goes from here. I'm just excited to see what happens next, and I've heard a lot of great things about the 4th book, so I'm going to pick that one up. And so far I'm only planning on reading the 4th book during my quarantine, since I have so many other books I want to read. But we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll just throw this whole list in the garbage and only read Throne of Glass if the 4th book goes really well. It's called balance. Oh, and if you haven't been following along on my channel to see this before, the Throne of Glass series is a YA fantasy novel in which our main character, Selena Sardothian, is an assassin, and at the beginning of the first novel, she's been captured, she's in prison, and in exchange for her release, she has to agree to become the king's champion, meaning being the king's assassin. Those very addictive stories with a lot of the love-to-hate relationships and so on, and angst and whatnot. It's great. But hoping on reading the 4th one during quarantine. One that's been on the list for literally years and I haven't gotten to yet, The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I plan on picking this one up and probably doing the audiobook of it just because, I don't know, I've got lots of other stuff going on. But I'm thinking that that is going to be a good one to listen to. I'm excited about it. It's not a story I know a ton about. I know though that it has a lot to do with magical bloodlines and monarchies and fantasy. I don't know. I've heard good things. It's one of those series where everyone says, read Red Queen, and no one says what Red Queen is about. I should know because I've, had the book sitting on my shelf for a couple of years. Every time I come to do a synopsis of it, I never know though, so I'm gonna read it though, then I can give you a better synopsis next time. And then one that I've been meaning to get to for years, and that I had big dreams of reading this year because I've been loving on this series for the past year on Stars, is Outlander. I'm gonna finally read it, or listen to it. We'll see which one happens. Either way, is on the list of things to do, and I'm so excited about it because I love the Outlander series on Starz so much. So Outlander, for those who don't know, could probably be lumped into kind of the historical fiction romance category. But our main character, Claire, was a World War II combat nurse, and then after the war ends, her and her husband decide to go on kind of a second honeymoon to rekindle their relationship because they've been away from each other for so long. When they come together for a second honeymoon in Scotland, they find a circle of stones, and Claire is whisked back in time to the 1700s. And so, yeah, obviously that presents a lot of different challenges and struggles, especially with Claire being very knowledgeable about medicine and sanitation and other general things that are understood in the 20th century. And so, you know, going back in time to the 1700s, you're dealing with people who think that by knowing how to fix medicines and do other things that you're a witch. So, you know, it comes with that whole fun bag of worms. Bag of worms? Can of worms. I also am going to be reading Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which is supposed to be kind of like a whodunit mystery novel of sorts, where our main character is going to like a school for like sleuths and stuff, and she's like trying to solve the murder of their like benefactor from the school's like family who had passed away years ago. That's really all I've heard of it, but like I've heard that she's like very clever and kind of like Sherlock Holmesy. So excited to pick that up. Again, I think that it's going to satisfy a lot of my love of mystery novels and whodunit and heist and whatnot. And finally, the last book on this very long list of books I want to read during quarantine is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. I haven't had the chance to get around to reading the illustrated edition of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire yet, so I figure what better time to do that. I just feel like I need some Harry Potter joy in my life right now. Because, you know, again, the world is weird, and even though I'm perfectly fine with spending more time indoors and not going to a bunch of social events, it is, you know, hard seeing everything else that's going on in the world and seeing how crazy people are being and how poorly people are treating one another. It's just depressing. But Harry Potter makes everything better, so I plan on also reading that. And there it is, you guys. That is the very large and ambitious list of books I want to read during quarantine. So that's it. Like I said, I don't know how many of these are actually going to be getting done immediately. I don't know how long I'm working from home. I don't know how long any of this goes for. So this is really a shot in the dark. Maybe it'll turn out that I'm only working from home for a couple of weeks, and then life goes back to normal, and this is just part of my, you know, next couple of months books to be read. So either way, this is what I'm reading. Tell me in the comments down below what books you guys are reading, because I would love to hear more about that. Anyways, that wraps up today's video. I hope you guys are all doing well. I hope you guys are all staying safe out there. I know that is the cliche thing that everyone is saying right now. Stay safe out there, kid. Well, that wraps up everything for today. Hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.